What if Hollywood's biggest stars weren't just acting scared on screen? Behind the glamorous gates of Golden Age mansions, A-listers lived with uninvited ghostly roommates who refused to leave. From mysterious fires that couldn't be extinguished to phantom horses galloping through empty stables. These celebrity homes harbored secrets darker than any movie script. Tonight we're exposing the most bone-chilling mansions where legends lived and spirits never left. Number 21. Rudolph Valentino. Rudolph Valentino built his dream mansion in 1925 for $175,000, but Falcon Lair became his eternal prison. This sprawling Benedict Canyon estate featured 16 rooms, Arabian horse stables, and Italian imported furnishings that cost him everything. When the Latin lover died suddenly in 1926, strange electrical phenomena began immediately. Western star Harry Carey rented the place in 1930, but fled after witnessing pale blue and green lights flashing mysteriously throughout the house. He discovered a spiritualist caretaker had been holding seances to contact Valentino's ghost, complete with electrical terminals that somehow projected the dead actor in full chic costume. Every subsequent tenant reported the same terrifying encounters. The phantom of Valentino, draped in his iconic cape, would materialize in rooms where he once lived. His beloved horses' spirits were seen galloping through empty stables, their ghostly hooves echoing through the night. Even more disturbing, neighbors reported seeing Valentino's ghost-grooming phantom horses that vanished when approached. The mansion's curse was so powerful that it remained largely vacant for 8 years. When tobacco heiress Doris Duke finally bought it in 1953, she embraced the supernatural activity, even hosting seances with Mae West and Gloria Swanson to communicate with the restless star. The original mansion was demolished in 2006, but Valentino's presence reportedly followed the rubble. Number 20. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford's Georgian mansion at 426 North Bristol Avenue became Hollywood's most malevolent haunted house. She purchased the 10-room estate in 1928 for $57,500, transforming it into her primary residence for 29 years. But according to her daughter, Christina Crawford, the house harbored evil spirits that may have influenced Joan's notorious cruelty. The most terrifying phenomenon was the bedroom wall behind Crawford's bed that would spontaneously burst into flames. These mysterious fires occurred repeatedly, with no logical explanation. Even after Crawford sold the property in the 1950s, every subsequent owner reported the same wall catching fire. As late as the 1980s, the flames would appear on the exact spot where Joan's headboard once rested. Christina Crawford revealed in Mommy Dearest that her childhood home was haunted by malevolent spirits who terrorized the family. Strange breaking sounds would echo through the house at night, but no damage was ever found the next morning. Multiple exorcists were called to cleanse the property, but they reported sensing an overwhelming evil presence. Some paranormal investigators theorized that the land itself was cursed and that the malevolent energy drove Joan to her documented abusive behavior. The most chilling theory suggested that Joan's ghost returned to the house after her death in 1977, playing billiards with an unknown male spirit dressed in 1930s clothing. The cursed mansion was extensively remodeled in 2003, but locals claim the supernatural activity never completely ceased. Number 19. Mary Pikford and Douglas Fairbanks. Pickfair was supposed to be Hollywood's White House, but instead became its most notorious haunted palace. Douglas Fairbanks bought the hunting lodge in 1919 for his bride Mary Pickford, transforming it into a 56-acre estate worth millions. The couple ruled Hollywood from their 22-room mansion, hosting everyone from Albert Einstein to Charlie Chaplan. But their glamorous life was tormented by the ghost of a female servant who refused to leave. The phantom woman would bang loudly in the attic every night, keeping the famous couple awake. Pickford tried reasoning with the spirit, politely asking her to stop, but the disturbances continued. Friends never knew if the ghost stories were real or elaborate entertainment, but the supernatural activity allegedly contributed to the couple's 1936 divorce. When Mary died in 1979, her husband Buddy Rogers claimed her ghost visited him in a white gown, warning him to sell immediately. Jerry Buss bought Pickfair for $5.4 million, but the hauntings intensified dramatically. He quickly sold to actress Pia Zadora, who initially blamed termites for demolishing the historic mansion in 1988. But in 2012, Zadora finally revealed the truth. A tall, laughing woman in white had terrorized her family whenever her husband traveled. You can deal with termites and plumbing issues, but you can't deal with the supernatural, she confessed. The ghost wasn't Mary Pikford, but allegedly one of Fairbanks' mistresses seeking eternal revenge. The demolition sparked outrage, but Zadora insisted no fortune was worth living with vengeful spirits who threatened her children's safety. Number 18. Bela Lugosi. The king of horror lived in his own real-life haunted house from 1934 to 1937. Bela Lugosi's Tudor-style mansion at 2829 Westshore Drive in Beechwood Canyon became as notorious as his Dracula performances. Built in 1930 directly below the Hollywood sign, the four-bedroom estate was designed by architect Frank W. Green with deliberately Gothic features. Lugosi filled it with gargoyles, unusual statues, and macabre artwork that reflected his vampire persona. But the supernatural activity began after his death in 1956, when psychic Sylvia Brown conducted an investigation. She encountered Lugosi's earthbound spirit resting in a wooden casket wrapped in his signature Dracula cape. The ghost looked directly at her and said menacingly, "You weren't invited." Multiple owners reported seeing the caped figure wandering the halls, particularly in rooms where Lugosi once entertained guests with horror stories. The mansion changed hands frequently because residents couldn't tolerate the eerie atmosphere. Later owners included John Cryer and Kathy Bates, both of whom experienced unexplained phenomena. The house featured original architectural details that seemed to amplify supernatural activity, including beam ceilings and stone fireplaces that cast ominous shadows. Neighbors reported seeing a caped figure in the windows long after the house was empty. When the property was listed for $3 million in 2017, real estate agents disclosed the haunting history to potential buyers. The vampire's eternal performance continued in his beloved Hollywood Hills retreat, where death couldn't end his starring role. Number 17. Charlie Chaplan. Charlie Chaplin's collection of Tudor cottages in West Hollywood became a supernatural sanctuary for the entertainment industry's biggest names. Built in the 1920s as an homage to his native England, the property featured 9 separate cottages surrounding an enchanted garden. Chaplan designed the complex as a private retreat where stars like Marilyn Monroe, Clark Gable, and Valentino could escape public scrutiny. But guests began reporting strange encounters that couldn't be explained. The cottages were arranged around mystical landscaping with multiple water fountains that seemed to channel otherworldly energy. Visitors described feeling an overwhelming sense of being watched, particularly in the Maryland suite, where Monroe herself once resided. The winding staircases and leaded stained glass windows created an atmosphere where reality blurred with the supernatural. Chaplan himself was fascinated by spiritualism and often hosted seances in the main cottage. He believed his creative genius was channeled through supernatural forces that inhabited the property. The garden's fig trees and grapevines seemed to respond to invisible hands, swaying without wind. Guests reported hearing disembodied laughter echoing through the courtyards at night, possibly Chaplin's spirit continuing to entertain. The property operated as a hotel for decades, with staff documenting unexplained phenomena, including doors opening by themselves and phantom footsteps on the upper floors. The cottages retained their mystical energy, attracting celebrities who were drawn to the supernatural history. Modern guests still report feeling the presence of Hollywood's golden age spirits who never checked out. Number 16. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn's 11-acre Mulholland Drive estate was built for sin and became eternally haunted by his restless spirit. The swashbuckling star spent $100,000 in 1941 constructing a colonial ranch house with secret passages, two-way mirrors, and peepholes for his legendary debauchery. Flynn installed a casino, tennis court, and swimming pool where Hollywood's elite indulged in illegal gambling and wild parties during Prohibition. But the supernatural activity began the night Flynn died in 1959, according to subsequent owner Stuart Hamblin. This devout Christian family experienced their first paranormal encounter immediately after Flynn's death. hearing furniture being smashed and glass breaking throughout the house. But the next morning, nothing was ever damaged. Rock star Ricky Nelson bought the property in 1980, and his daughter Tracy reported seeing Flynn's ghost sitting on the edge of her bed. She heard the phantom sounds before tragedy struck, as if Flynn's spirit was trying to warn the family. Gunnar Nelson and other guests witnessed the caped figure wandering Flynn's former den and bedroom wing. The hauntings were so intense that children would instinctively avoid certain areas without understanding why. Flynn's ghost allegedly appeared before Nelson's fatal plane crash, desperately trying to prevent another tragedy at his beloved estate. The paranormal activity centered around Flynn's private rooms, where his most notorious activities had taken place. When the mansion was demolished in 1988, locals claim Flynn's spirit followed the destruction, unable to leave his earthly paradise of hedonistic pleasure. Number 15. John Barrymore. The Great Profile. John Barrymore lived in a Spanish-style Beverly Hills mansion that doubled as his supernatural stage. Built in the 1920s with red-tiled roofs and cultivated jungle gardens, the estate featured Hollywood's most notorious opium den. Barrymore, a legendary stage actor and grandfather of Drew Barrymore, installed the smoking room above his bedroom with dual access points. He and his guests would recline on plush carpets and pillows, inhaling opium vapor from elaborate pipes. This den of artistic inspiration became the epicenter of supernatural activity after Barrymore's death in 1942. The mansion's wraparound veranda and winding garden paths created an otherworldly atmosphere where reality seemed fluid. Barrymore's ghost was first reported performing Shakespeare monologues in empty rooms, his theatrical training continuing beyond death. The opium den retained its mystical energy, with visitors reporting strange visions and the scent of phantom smoke. Multiple owners described hearing Barrymore's distinctive voice reciting Hamlet's soliloquies throughout the house. His spirit allegedly appeared in period costume, still seeking the perfect performance that had eluded him in life. The mansion's dramatic architecture, with arched doorways and ornate details, seemed designed for supernatural theater. When the property was featured on million-dollar listing in 2020 for $15.9 million, real estate agents disclosed the haunting history. Barrymore's ghost remained the house's most famous resident, delivering eternal performances for an audience only he could see. Number 14. Jean Harlo. Jean Harlo's Beverly Hills mansion became a shrine to Hollywood glamour and supernatural sorrow. The platinum blonde sensation died tragically young at 26 in 1937, but her spirit refused to abandon the lavish estate she'd worked desperately to afford. Harlo had purchased the Spanish colonial home for $50,000 at the peak of her fame, decorating it in platinum and white to match her iconic image. But her ghost was first encountered at Forest Lawn Cemetery, where visitors reported feeling her presence reaching out with overwhelming loneliness. The supernatural activity then manifested at her former home, where new owners experienced unexplained phenomena that suggested Harlo's spirit was trapped between worlds. She appeared to visitors in her signature white evening gowns, seemingly unaware of her own death. The mansion's white marble floors and crystal chandeliers created an ethereal atmosphere that amplified her ghostly presence. Harlo's bedroom, where she'd spent her final days battling kidney failure, became the center of supernatural activity. Residents reported hearing her distinctive voice calling for help, as if reliving her painful final illness. Her vanity table, covered with platinum cosmetics, would rearrange itself overnight despite being locked in empty rooms. Harlo's ghost allegedly searched through her belongings, looking for something she'd lost in life. The mansion changed hands frequently because owners couldn't tolerate the overwhelming sadness that permeated every room. Hollywood's first bombshell had achieved immortality, but at the cost of eternal imprisonment in her palatial tomb. Number 13. Clara Bose. Clara Bose's Hollywood Hills mansion echoed with the phantom sounds of silent movie sets. The it girl of the 1920s had purchased the modest estate in 1923 after her breakthrough film launched her to stardom. But Bose's notorious party lifestyle and rumored affairs with the entire USC football team created negative energy that lingered long after her 1933 retirement. The house became supernaturally active after Bose's death in 1965, when new owners reported hearing the sounds of wild jazz-age parties emanating from empty rooms. Disembodied laughter and Charleston music would echo through the halls at night, as if Bose's spirit was eternally reliving her party girl heyday. Her ghost appeared in the 1920s flapper attire, dancing alone to music only she could hear. The mansion's original Spanish architecture seemed frozen in the silent film era, with shadows that moved independently of any light source. Bose's bedroom, where she'd entertained countless lovers, became the epicenter of supernatural activity. Residents reported feeling passionate embraces from invisible hands and hearing whispered endearments in Bose's distinctive Brooklyn accent. Her vanity mirror would fog mysteriously, spelling out messages only she could understand. The It Girl's restless spirit seemed trapped in the era that made her famous, unable to accept that silent films had ended. Her ghost allegedly searched through closets filled with 1920s costumes, preparing for parties that would never come. The mansion's supernatural energy attracted other spirits from Hollywood's silent era, creating a phantom gathering that played out nightly in Bose's eternal ballroom. Number 12. Gloria Swanson. Gloria Swanson's mansion served as inspiration for Sunset Boulevard's Gothic masterpiece, but the real supernatural drama exceeded any screenplay. The silent film queen had purchased the sprawling estate in the 1920s during her peak earning years of $20,000 per week. Swanson filled the mansion with exotic artifacts from her worldwide travels and relationships with European nobility. But after her career declined with the advent of talkies, the mansion became a shrine to faded glory, where reality blurred with madness. Swanson's ghost was first reported in the 1950s, appearing in her elaborate silent film costumes and demanding to know why the cameras had stopped rolling. Her spirit seemed trapped in a perpetual state of denial about her career's end, just like the fictional Norma Desmond. The mansion's grand staircase became the setting for supernatural performances, where Swanson's ghost would make dramatic entrances for audiences only she could see. Her private screening room continued showing silent films to empty chairs, the projector operating mysteriously by itself. Residents reported hearing Swanson practicing her lines for comebacks that would never materialize. Her bedroom shrine, filled with photographs from her glory days, would rearrange itself into different configurations each morning. The mansion's swimming pool, similar to the one in Sunset Boulevard, was avoided by maintenance workers who claimed to see a floating figure in period costume. Swanson's supernatural performances were more compelling than any movie role, as she refused to accept that her spotlight had dimmed forever. Number 11. Pola Negri. Polish actress Pola Negri's mansion became a monument to supernatural obsession and eternal grief. The exotic European star had been Rudolph Valentino's lover and publicly mourned his death in spectacular fashion, throwing herself on his coffin at the funeral. Negri purchased a Gothic revival mansion in Hollywood Hills for $75,000, decorating it with dark European antiques and Valentino memorabilia. But her excessive grief created supernatural energy that attracted malevolent spirits to the property. Negri's ghost was first encountered in the 1960s, appearing in black mourning attire and weeping uncontrollably for her lost love. Her spirit seemed obsessed with contacting Valentino's ghost, conducting eternal seances in the mansion's tower room. The property's Gothic architecture, with pointed arches and stone gargoyles, amplified the supernatural activity. Residents reported hearing Negri's voice calling Valentino's name throughout the night, her European accent echoing through empty corridors. Her bedroom, shrouded in black curtains and filled with Valentino's photographs, became the center of paranormal manifestations. The mansion's organ would play funeral dirges by itself, as if responding to Negri's endless mourning. Visitors described feeling overwhelming sadness that drove many to flee the property immediately. Negri's ghost allegedly reenacted her dramatic funeral scene repeatedly, throwing herself on phantom coffins and shrieking in multiple languages. Her supernatural obsession created a portal for other grieving spirits, turning the mansion into a haven for Hollywood's heartbroken dead who could never find peace. Number 10. Ramon Navaro. Ramon Navaro's mansion became a supernatural crime scene long before his brutal 1968 murder. The silent film heartthrob had purchased the Mission Revival estate in 1924, during his peak as MGM's Latin lover rival to Rudolph Valentino. Navaro decorated the Spanish colonial home with religious artifacts that reflected his deep Catholic faith, but the mansion harbored dark secrets about his hidden homosexuality. The supernatural activity began decades before his death, with servants reporting strange voices and inexplicable cold spots throughout the house. Navaro's ghost was first encountered by subsequent owners who described a handsome figure in 1920s evening wear, eternally searching for something he'd lost. The mansion's chapel, where Navaro prayed daily for forgiveness, became the epicenter of supernatural manifestations. Religious artifacts would move by themselves, and visitors reported hearing Latin prayers echoing from empty rooms. The tragic irony was that Navaro's spirit seemed tormented by the same shame that plagued his living years. His ghost appeared most frequently in the bedroom, where he was brutally murdered by male hustlers, as if trying to prevent the crime. Paranormal investigators noted that the mansion's supernatural activity intensified after 1968, suggesting Navaro's violent death had trapped his soul. The property changed hands frequently because residents couldn't tolerate the overwhelming sense of tragedy that permeated every room. Navaro's spirit allegedly searched through his possessions, looking for letters and photographs that proved his forbidden relationships, even in death unable to find peace with his true identity. Number 8. Thetara. Thetara's mansion became Hollywood's most notorious center of supernatural evil. The original screen vamp had purchased a dark Victorian estate in 1915, decorating it with occult artifacts and Egyptian antiquities that matched her mysterious screen persona. Bera claimed to be the daughter of an Italian sculptor and French actress, but her real name was Theodosia Goodman from Ohio. Her elaborate fictional biography extended to her mansion, which she transformed into a temple of dark magic. The supernatural activity began immediately, with servants reporting that Bera conducted actual black magic rituals in her basement chamber. Her ghost was first encountered in the 1920s, appearing in her iconic vamp costumes and practicing occult ceremonies that terrified witnesses. The mansion's seance room, decorated with crystal balls and tarot cards, remained supernaturally active long after Bera's death. Residents reported seeing her spirit performing rituals with invisible participants, chanting in ancient languages she'd learned for her mystical screen roles. The basement chamber, where Bera allegedly communed with evil spirits, became too dangerous for most owners to enter. Paranormal investigators documented temperature drops of 40 degrees and electromagnetic disturbances that damaged their equipment. Bera's ghost seemed to draw power from the supernatural artifacts she'd collected, creating a vortex of dark energy that attracted malevolent spirits. The mansion's mirrors would show reflections of people who weren't there, and photographs taken inside would reveal shadowy figures surrounding Bera's ghost. Her eternal performance as Hollywood's first vamp continued in death, making her mansion too dangerous for ordinary residents to inhabit. Number 7. Lon Chaney. Lon Chaney's mansion became a supernatural theater where the man of 1,000 faces continued his transformations beyond death. The master of horror makeup had purchased a Tudor revival estate in 1925, filling it with prosthetic faces and makeup equipment that created an atmosphere of perpetual transformation. Chaney's dedication to his craft was legendary, spending hours applying painful makeup that permanently damaged his health. But his ghost was reported appearing in different forms, cycling through his most famous characters in an eternal performance. The mansion's makeup room, preserved exactly as Chaney left it, became the center of supernatural activity. Visitors reported seeing phantom figures applying makeup at his vanity table, transforming themselves into various monsters and characters. Chaney's ghost allegedly appeared as the Phantom of the Opera, Quasimodo, and dozens of other characters he'd portrayed on screen. The mansion's mirrors reflected faces that weren't there, showing Chaney's supernatural transformations to terrified witnesses. His spirit seemed trapped in a cycle of endless character changes, unable to find his true face beneath the makeup. Residents described hearing the sounds of painful makeup application echoing from empty rooms, including Chaney's distinctive groans as he endured prosthetic torture. The mansion's costume room would rearrange itself overnight, with different outfits selected for each supernatural performance. Chaney's ghost allegedly searched through his makeup supplies, preparing for roles he would never play in films that would never be made. His supernatural dedication to his craft continued indefinitely, making the mansion a constantly changing gallery of horror. Number 6. John Gilbert. John Gilbert's mansion became a supernatural monument to careers destroyed by technological change. The silent film romantic lead had purchased a Spanish-style estate on Tower Grove Road for $150,000 during his peak earning period of $10,000 per week. But the advent of talkies allegedly revealed a high-pitched voice that ended his career, though modern historians dispute this myth. Gilbert's ghost was first reported in the 1940s, appearing in 1920s evening wear and practicing dialogue exercises in empty rooms. His spirit seemed trapped by the trauma of career destruction, endlessly rehearsing lines for roles he'd never play again. The mansion's projection room continued showing Gilbert's silent films to phantom audiences, the equipment operating mysteriously by itself. Residents reported hearing his ghost practicing voice exercises, trying to lower his pitch for sound films that would never come. Gilbert's bedroom, where he died of heart failure at 38, became the center of supernatural activity. His spirit allegedly reenacted dramatic love scenes with invisible co-stars, particularly recreating his legendary romance with Greta Garbo. The mansion's grand staircase served as Gilbert's supernatural stage, where his ghost made dramatic entrances for audiences only he could see. Visitors described feeling overwhelming melancholy that drove many to flee immediately. Gilbert's ghost seemed obsessed with proving his voice was acceptable for sound films, conducting eternal screen tests that no director would ever see. His supernatural desperation created a vortex of broken dreams that attracted other fallen silent stars to the property. Number 5. Lupe Veles. Lupe Veles's mansion echoed with supernatural rage long after the Mexican Spitfire took her own life in 1944. The tempestuous actress had purchased a Spanish colonial estate in Beverly Hills during her peak earning period, decorating it with Mexican artifacts and religious icons. But Veles's notorious temper and turbulent relationships created negative energy that lingered in every room. Her ghost was first reported by subsequent owners who described a beautiful woman in flowing Mexican dresses, eternally furious about unknown grievances. The supernatural activity centered around Veles's bedroom, where she died from an overdose of seconal pills. Her spirit allegedly reenacted dramatic confrontations with invisible lovers, her distinctive voice echoing through empty corridors. The mansion's dining room, where Veles had thrown legendary tantrums, became supernaturally active with phantom dishes shattering against walls. Residents reported feeling intense emotional energy that triggered their own anger and frustration. Veles's ghost appeared most frequently during thunderstorms, as if her tempestuous nature was drawn to dramatic weather. Her spirit seemed trapped by the same passionate intensity that defined her living years, unable to find peace in death. The mansion's Mexican shrine, where Veles prayed for forgiveness, would mysteriously light its candles despite being secured from human access. Paranormal investigators documented dramatic temperature fluctuations and electromagnetic disturbances that correlated with emotional outbursts. Veles's supernatural fury created an atmosphere so intense that most owners couldn't tolerate the emotional assault of living with her eternally enraged spirit. Number 4. Wallace Reed. Wallace Reed's mansion became a supernatural crime scene, documenting Hollywood's first major drug scandal. The wholesome leading man had purchased a craftsman-style estate in 1918 during his peak as Paramount's biggest star, earning $4,000 weekly. But Reed became addicted to morphine after a train accident during filming, beginning a downward spiral that ended with his death in a sanitarium in 1850-1923. His ghost was first reported in the 1930s, appearing in obvious physical distress and searching desperately through medicine cabinets for phantom drugs. The mansion's master bedroom, where Reed had suffered through withdrawal attempts, became the center of supernatural activity. Residents reported hearing his distinctive voice pleading for medical help and calling for his wife Dorothy. Reed's spirit seemed trapped in eternal withdrawal, experiencing the physical agony that had defined his final years. The mansion's bathroom, where Reed had hidden his drug supplies, would mysteriously reveal syringes and medicine bottles that disappeared when investigated. His ghost allegedly reenacted his desperate attempts to quit drugs, going through phantom withdrawal symptoms that terrified witnesses. Visitors described feeling overwhelming physical discomfort and desperation that drove many to flee immediately. Reed's supernatural suffering served as a warning about Hollywood's dark side, decades before addiction became publicly acknowledged. The mansion's supernatural energy seemed to attract other drug-addicted spirits, creating a gathering place for Hollywood's casualties. Reed's ghost continued his eternal struggle against addiction, making the mansion too painful for most residents to inhabit, while his spirit remained trapped in perpetual suffering. Number 3. Fatty Arbuckle. Fatty Arbuckle's mansion became the supernatural scene of Hollywood's first major scandal. The rotund comedian had purchased a Spanish-style estate in 1920 during his peak earning period of $1,000 daily, making him one of the highest-paid performers in the world. But the mansion was forever tainted by the 1921 scandal, when actress Virginia Rappe died after attending one of Arbuckle's notorious parties. His ghost was first reported in the 1930s, appearing as a jovial fat man who suddenly transformed into a figure of tragic despair. The supernatural activity centered around the mansion's party room, where Rappe had allegedly been assaulted before her death. Arbuckle's spirit seemed trapped by the scandal that destroyed his career, endlessly reenacting parties that turned into nightmares. Residents reported hearing phantom laughter that suddenly transformed into desperate weeping, echoing through empty corridors. The mansion's bathroom, where Rappe had become ill, became supernaturally active with unexplained medical emergencies affecting visitors. Arbuckle's ghost allegedly appeared to female guests, gesturing apologetically as if trying to explain his innocence. His spirit seemed obsessed with clearing his name, conducting eternal trials in the mansion's living room with invisible judges and juries. The supernatural energy created such intense guilt and sadness that most owners couldn't tolerate the emotional atmosphere. Arbuckle's ghost continued his desperate attempts at vindication, making the mansion a monument to Hollywood's power to destroy innocent lives through scandal and sensationalism. Number 2. Harold Lloyd. Harold Lloyd's mansion echoed with supernatural stunts long after the bespectacled comedian stopped risking his life for laughs. The silent film Daredevil had purchased a 44-room Italian Renaissance estate called Green Acres in 1928, filling it with memorabilia from his death-defying career. But Lloyd's most famous stunt, hanging from a clock tower in Safety Last, created supernatural energy that attracted other thrill-seeking spirits. His ghost was first reported performing impossible aerial stunts throughout the mansion's multiple levels, defying gravity just as he had in life. The supernatural activity centered around Lloyd's screening room, where his films continued playing to phantom audiences who gasped at every dangerous stunt. Residents reported hearing the sound of breaking glass throughout the house, despite no actual damage being found. Lloyd's spirit allegedly reenacted his most dangerous stunts, hanging from the mansion's balconies and chandeliers with supernatural agility. The estate's golf course became supernaturally active, with Lloyd's ghost playing eternal rounds while hanging from impossible positions. His spirit seemed addicted to danger, even in death, unable to find peace without constant thrills. The mansion's gymnasium, where Lloyd had trained for his stunts, would mysteriously activate its equipment despite being locked and secured. Visitors described feeling compelled to attempt dangerous activities, as if Lloyd's ghost was encouraging them to join his supernatural circus. His eternal performance as Hollywood's most dangerous comedian continued indefinitely, making the mansion too thrilling for ordinary residents to survive. Number 1. Mary Pikford. Mary Pikford's solo story reveals the darkest secret of Pickfair's supernatural activity. After divorcing Douglas Fairbanks in 1936, America's sweetheart remained in the haunted mansion with new husband Buddy Rogers, but the female servant's ghost became increasingly possessive and violent. Pikford had earned an unprecedented $1 million contract in 1919, making her the world's highest-paid performer, but no amount of money could buy peace from the supernatural torment. The ghost's identity was finally revealed through seances conducted in Pickfair's tower room. The spirit was allegedly Fairbanks' secret mistress, who had died mysteriously during the mansion's construction, her body buried somewhere on the 56-acre estate. Pickford's later years were consumed by alcoholism and reclusiveness, speaking to visitors only by telephone while hiding in her bedroom. But staff reported that she was actually communicating with the vengeful ghost, who demanded acknowledgement of her affair with Fairbanks. The supernatural activity escalated after Pickford's death in 1979, with Buddy Rogers claiming her spirit joined forces with the original ghost to terrorize future owners. When Jerry Buss bought the property, both spirits allegedly appeared together, creating such intense supernatural chaos that he immediately sold to Pia Zadora. The combined haunting was so powerful that Zadora ultimately demolished Hollywood's most famous mansion rather than face the eternal wrath of two spurned women. The real tragedy wasn't the destruction of architectural history, but the revelation that America's sweetheart had spent her final decades trapped in supernatural hell with the ghost of her husband's betrayal. These Golden Age legends traded earthly fame for eternal imprisonment in their dream mansions. While they lived like royalty, death transformed them into prisoners of their own success. But here's the real question. If you could afford a $50 million mansion, knowing it came with a vengeful spirit roommate, would you sign the deed? Tell us which haunted celebrity mansion you'd brave for one night, and whether you think these stars deserve eternal peace or supernatural punishment for the scandals they hid behind their glamorous facades.